Hello, welcome everybody. Come on in. It's 3 o'clock, 12 o'clock Pacific. Come to the front. Don't stay at the back. Don't be shy. My name's Greg. I'm head of marketing here, and I'll be moderating this conversation. And as we wait for 20-ish seconds before passing it to Thomas and Jeremy, just some housekeeping things. This will get recorded, so you'll get a recording of this afterwards that you can share with colleagues or watch again. And there is a lovely chat on the right-hand side. Please use it. Use it to say hi. Hey, everyone. And ask questions. So if you have questions, burning questions right off the top, you want them to cover about anything about EV charging, write it down. Throughout, ask questions as they are talking. They see the chat, and Thomas and Jeremy are awesome at responding to them. So it creates a really fluid conversation. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Jeremy and Thomas to kick things off.
Excellent. Thanks, Greg. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today's episode is called Effortless EV Charging for Your Property. My name is Jeremy Cohen. I'm the Director of Real Estate Partnerships here at Switch. A lot of what I do is work with developers and owners and operators of real estate to help them with their EV charging strategy across their portfolio. I am joined by my trusted colleague, Thomas Martin. Thomas, over to you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. I see a couple familiar names in the chat, so nice to sync up with you in 2026. I come to you from the sales engineering side of Switch, so everything technology, how we solution in buildings. And I guess my angle on today's conversation is just how do we use technology and the tools available to us to best design and deploy EV charging infrastructure to take into account performance, cost, and everything EV charging. And without going too deep, we should kick it off.
Excellent.
And maybe I'll encourage again, any questions, post in the chat. It's a lot easier to adjust our level of detail based on the questions we're getting. So throw it out there. Doesn't matter if it's a simple one or more complicated. We're going to be taking turns and keeping an eye on the chat. In terms of a bit of housekeeping, Jeremy and I are going to aim to be around 25 minutes, pretty quick. And then we'll leave some room at the end of the presentation to go a bit deeper into a few topics if anybody has any detailed questions. So hopefully we can take you on a nice journey and talk about how to make effortless EV charging for your property. Jeremy.
Nice. All right. Thanks, Thomas. Pretty jam-packed agenda. We're going to cruise through it. But we're going to talk about why EV charging now. I know there's some EV charging experts on this call. There also might be some novices, so we want to cater to everyone. We'll talk a little bit about our plan and just the key questions to consider as you go on the EV charging installation journey from start to finish. Thomas is going to really take some time to jump in there and get granular with the hardware and the software. And then we'll wrap it up with a bow later, what we call our plan, install, manage service, which is just part of the cadence. So join me on this journey. Thomas, next slide.
Let's go.
So for those of you that are new to the call, just a little bit about Switch. We have over 20,000 chargers out there on the Switch network, which is all across Canada, the US, and Puerto Rico. And we have a really incredible uptime, the network uptime of 99.7. At the end of the day, you just want these chargers online, working, operable. You don't want to think about them too much. We're very fortunate for a lot of the clients who trust Switch and have selected us to be part of their EV charging journey as well. So we're doing some really great work. So as I alluded to earlier, we have what's called the design, quote, install, and manage cadence. And that is essentially taking you from the beginning of I'm interested in EV chargers to now I have EV chargers and what do I do with them outside of people who are just actually charging. We're going to get a little deeper on that as we go about the presentation, but just want to put that up there for everyone to consider. So why now? Right? I'm sure if you're joining this call, you're in the EV charging industry, you maybe have installed EV chargers, or maybe you're a property owner and operator and your tenants are asking for them. Well, Thomas and I peppered in a lot of statistics throughout this slide because we think statistics actually tell a really good story. So EV sales are projected to hit 53% of all cars in 2030. We're 4 years away from that, and having half the cars potentially on the road being electric, now is definitely the time to start considering EV charging as a whole. And for those who know EV charging, or for those who don't, 80% of charging takes place at home where one resides, or at work where one dwells for a period of time. And essentially, this car is going to be plugged in and charging for a longer duration where one lives, works, so on and so forth. There are a ton of active incentive programs throughout the US, as well as Canada, to offset a lot of the costs associated with installing EV chargers. We're going to get into that in a little bit, but just want to make those on the call aware that there are ways to offset some of this cost, because cost is always a factor. So talking about the key factors, or let's go through some questions to consider on the EV charging journey. So if you're a novice, you might be scratching your head. You've heard a bunch of different things. Where do you even begin? What EV chargers do I need at my property, at my home, wherever you think EV chargers might be needed? So let's help, on that, Thomas.
Yeah, I think this is typically the starting point in the conversation, and that's why Jeremy and I want to highlight it. But basically, there's a wide spectrum of what's available to you. But I think the right place to start is trying to understand what performance meets the expected user behavior of the EV drivers. Are these drivers going to be dwelling long at the property? Is this a public rest area where they just want to stop, get some food, and keep going? Understanding the behavior of the people who will be using this infrastructure is very important, and that often points us in the right direction. In terms of performance, we categorize them into 3 major buckets: level 1, level 2, and DCFC. Level 2 is the real workhorse of the industry. This represents 95+% of chargers in the market. And the reason for that is it strikes the balance between economics and performance. This will charge your car in 4 to 6 hours. So for multi-unit dwellings, workplaces, places where you spend, hour and a half, 2 hours, these are great assets to have at the property to add to the user satisfaction or the tenant satisfaction. And later in today's presentation, we're going to talk on all the infrastructure required to support these assets. But generally, starting with performance and the user behavior is what we want to think about. The rest all falls into play.
Excellent. We peppered in some questions throughout the presentation that we hear boots on the ground. So a lot of questions that I'm here, throughout my day-to-day. And, one of them is, how many chargers should I install? I get that question almost every day. It's generic and it's really hard to determine, but if we start to use some of the statistics behind that, we can pretty much get there. So we know that almost half of cars are going to be electric in 2030. That's a head start. So you'll definitely need more than 2. Survey the tenants. A lot of times owners and operators just kind of hide behind the scenes and they don't engage the tenants so much. We definitely recommend do a quick survey monkey. Send it out to the tenants. Do you have an electric vehicle? If you do, where are you charging if we don't have EVs on site now? If we were to add EV chargers, how likely are to use it? Or if you don't have an EV now, how likely are you to purchase an EV should we install EV chargers? Simple questions like that can help determine. And lastly, the cars are already in the lot. Just take a look around, see how many are electric, how many are not. Great places just to start on the macro level.
It very quickly changes into how many chargers can I install? And that's where we want to be working with qualified technicians to just do an accurate assessment. Historically, this has been a tough question to answer for every property because we have to look at electrical capacity, but gone are those days. And the reason for that is because a number of electrical code, along with technology advancements, allows us to install more chargers than we originally thought. But in terms of the user behavior, we want to think about what is the number of ports or parking spaces that I would like to electrify to service the EV charging need for my tenants. And what you want to think through here is how often will people be coming in and out, and how often will they be looking to charge their car? It may not be every day. So in the case of a workplace, you may not have people charging there as their primary source of fuel, but say on a Friday, if they're going for a drive after work or going on a road trip, they might want to use that asset. So the starting point here is looking at electrical capacity, and Switch has a number of tools and levers that we can pull here to avoid the cost of infrastructure upgrades. I'm going to get to that later in today's presentation, but before that, we want to quickly address the budget conversation. And that's where someone like Jeremy comes in.
Absolutely. I mean, budget is everything. Money talks. But if you're an owner and operator, you're looking at this from a couple different lenses. How much available capital do I have on hand for such a project? Some owners and operators look at this as just a true amenity. Maybe it's just a checkbox. But some are maybe looking at it as a true ROI vehicle, just a true revenue generator. So then you're looking at it as, well, what's the payback needed? A couple ways to skin this cat in terms of installation is this going to be a CapEx installation, hardware, software installation, or is it going to be an OpEx project where maybe there's just one monthly number that the charging provider provides, and that's what it's going to be for, the next 5 years. And just know that there's incentives and available credits and rebates out there to offset a lot of this cost, which we've alluded to earlier, and we'll definitely get a little more granular towards the end of the presentation as well. So Thomas, walk us through the system. Talk to us about the actual guts of the operation.
Yeah, let's do it. We need to think through what are the differences between EV chargers. And the question that we often are asked is, can I just buy any charger, install them, and start charging? You can find chargers at a lot of major, electronic depots these days, Best Buy, Home Depot, you name it. But the answer is no. If you just simply install a charger on the side of your building and let people use it, you're going to be giving away free fuel, and you're going to be operating at a fairly large loss. And so what we advise is we want to use what we call smart chargers or commercial grade chargers. And this allows us to overlay it with a software platform to help with the management of that EV charger. And by management, I kind of break it down into these 4 core buckets. And so these 4 core buckets are the different ways that EV charging service will make hosting EV charging at your property effortless. So first, we're going to start with the EV chargers themselves and the infrastructure. So my earlier question was, what am I looking for? Can I install any EV charger? The question to make it easy on the audience is, what should I look for? Is there something specific? And this can be very complicated very quickly. So we've oversimplified it and basically promote anybody looking to install EV chargers at their building to look for this one standard, OCPP. And what this basically allows us to do is make use of open standards at the property versus using a proprietary piece of hardware. So with the use of open standards, you can think of it like telecom. You can take your cell phone and move between networks, Verizon, AT&T, Bell, Rogers, whoever it might be, and you're not locked into the service. And so with Switch, since we're providing you with OCPP hardware, you are not tied to us on the service component. And in a way, that's our service guarantee. But from an industry standpoint, whether you select us or somebody else, open standards is going to protect the property long-term against asset lock-in. And so just to give you a quick snapshot, this isn't an exhaustive view. This is kind of our key products, the ones that sell in high volumes. But you can see they all look differently, but they all function the same. And so we're looking to provide you with a reliable option. So what other considerations do I need in addition to the EV chargers? You need to think about accessories. So in this photo, you can see here we have pedestals, cable retractors. They keep the install nice, neat, and tidy so that you don't end up with parking lot spaghetti, as we like to call it. You want to think about where are we installing the EV chargers in regards to the proximity to the electrical service. And so a lot of the time people think, hey, I have these parking spots available, I want to install them there. If the electrical service isn't close or within reason, it can get expensive very quick. So we like to look at the location of where we would be pulling power from as our starting point to limit the total cost. For underground parking garages, the internet connection for these chargers is often overlooked. And so if your parking lot or the spaces are in an underground space, you want to think about how are we going to get internet to those spaces. If you were to work with someone like us, we provide a turnkey service to do this, so you don't have to think twice about it. But if you are, going to RFP or you're sourcing multiple vendors, this is a line item that you will want to have clearly stated. And then finally, the software. This is the intelligent aspect of it that makes operating in the property very easy and seamless. Without the software, you would have to have somebody going and checking on the chargers daily and basically having human intervention to keep the operation moving smoothly. And so the software is its own category here. So we're going to move on to our second key pillar. So why do I need software if these are just simply large electrical outlets? Well, before you say, why do I need software, you probably want to ask yourself the following questions. Who is going to access these chargers? How much revenue have we made? How does the driver pay for electricity? What if the chargers are all on at the same time? If the driver leaves their car charging in their spot, what happens? And finally, how do I know if something breaks? All of these are things we have to consider on the daily. And the good news is software, our software is the solution here to take care of that for you. We call it Switch Portal. It's included in our rates. It's basically just an annual rate, and we take care of all of the service and how to set up a charger, including access control, variable rates, loitering and enforcement, and real-time charging insights. So as we start to build context to this conversation, one thing that usually stops us halfway is, my building wasn't built to handle this level of electricity consumption, and I can't simply install hundreds of thousands of dollars in infrastructure to upgrade it. So going back to the original question, how many chargers can I install without breaking my budget or breaking the bank? And so having budget early on in the conversation definitely helps us on the technical solutioning side, because we know where our limits are and we can meet the number of ports required within that budget. So how do we do that? So I want to introduce a concept called energy management. And the idea is that energy management is taking the available capacity in the building, whether you're at the 5 p.m. peak or in the overnight hours when electricity rates are low. We can control when charging happens. And if you see here in the graphic, we shift charging to the areas of the time of day when EV charging has remaining capacity available to it. And so in the context of an apartment building, the building usually sees its peak in the evening, and that also coincides when people come home and plug in. And so they can plug in, we're going to start charging their car. But if we approach the limit of the service, we can slow things down and push charging into the morning. That being said, we will design this such that every vehicle would be charged by the morning, by 6 a.m. And so the thinking here is we're not intentionally charging your car slow. We're just making sure we meet the performance criteria, which is every morning my car starts full power. So the next thing we want to get into is the driver experience. And so from the driver's perspective, they don't need anything fancy. They just want to use, pay, and get help. And that's where we come in. So they would use our mobile app to interface with the charging station. This is where they're going to see rates, how to pay, how to access, that type of thing, nice and clean. They can also request an RFID card if they are frequently using that charger, whether it's in their personal private space or it's at the public location that they frequent. Or if they're simply coming across Switch for the first time, they can use our web app, which is just accessed by scanning the QR code on the machine. And so how do EV drivers pay for the electricity used? They pay through the app. But the service that Switch is providing is basically we will collect all of the revenue from each individual transaction deposit it into a virtual bank account, and then on a monthly basis, we give it back to the building. And so one key detail to highlight here is that the building owner is the one that sets the rate. Switch is just the mechanism. And so we're going to work with the building here to make sure that we're recouping the cost of electricity, as well as maybe a bit of margin to account for the maintenance of the installation. So Jeremy, that was a lot of information, but when talking EV charging and how it relates to other technologies in the building, maybe give us a snapshot of what you see in the market.
Absolutely. And great job, Thomas. So EV charging as a whole is just a fraction of what's going on at the building level, right? There's so many other technology providers that are operating within the built environment. So one of the things that we typically hear is, how does EV adopt, or how does EV integrate with other technologies? So the beautiful part is we do. So we wanted to provide you with a multitude of different use case scenarios where EV charging is just a factor within the bigger scheme of a project. So for instance, here's one of our integrations where Switch integrated our software into the Flash parking solution. So Flash is a smart parking automation company. They already had their technology at the building level, and Ani, which is the real estate owner operator, wanted a seamless experience for their residents. So we essentially integrate the EV charging software into the Flash parking solution app, and to make the parking experience completely frictionless. A driver comes in, the lift gate automatically lifts. They've now recognized whose license plate and car it is. The driver then has authorized a charge, and they then move their car and they leave the parking garage, all without having to do anything. That is all via, the Flash parking and Switch integration app. So I joke, I just say Switch doesn't have an ego. We can always live behind the scenes, you don't even know that we exist, or we could be front and center. Whatever the use case is, we just want to make the client happy. In this case, it was Ani. Another project that we did was a mixed use building. So it was a multifamily and commercial office project where Concora was our developer, but they had already been using Smart One, which is another prop tech platform. And we're also using Klaus Parking for their parking automation system. So this was a perfect example of where Switch integrated into both the property management software, which takes care of such things such as billing, maintenance requests, accounting, lease ups, so on and so forth. And then, of course, the parking system, such as liftgate automation, license plate reading technology. And we were able to work behind the scenes to not even know and just make the EV charging experience completely frictionless, for the drivers, but also for the owner and the operator of the real estate. One of the biggest things we hear is app fatigue, and we completely get it. Even as a user of multiple apps versus a client of multiple apps. Here's just another one. CSC ServiceWorks. If you're a real estate owner or operator on this call, perhaps you have CSC laundry machines. They're one of the leaders in providing laundry and dryer services to multifamily buildings. We recognize that we were servicing a lot of the same clients. So a lot of those who reside in CSC buildings are using their CSC RFID card to pay for their laundry and washing machine dryer services. We integrate with that same service, and they're able to use the same app and the same RFID card that they're using to pay for their dry cleaning, for their washers and dryers, to also pay for a Switch EV charge. So very cool, multiple different use cases. And again, just want to make it very easy as the driver, but also very easy for owners and operators. And, we recognize that, this is hardware, this is software. Things are bound to break at some point in time, as we've seen even, with our own gadgets and gizmos that we own. And with that, we think it's important that you always have ongoing maintenance and support. So just know that, there'll always be the software, there'll always be the hardware, but we do believe that having O&M support, is definitely important because, acts of God do happen out there. Weather-related issues, someone backs into an EV charger, you just need to be realistic. So have a plan. Reliability is everything. As I said at the beginning of the call, you just want these chargers to work. You've invested in them. treat them as much. Look at it like an insurance policy. So the software itself is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. The software is monitoring the chargers 24/7, 365. But that little ongoing maintenance plan to have in addition to the software definitely helps, in the event that we need to provide additional parts, labor, so on and so forth, because there's only so much that software can really do. Sometimes it requires someone coming on site to diagnose a problem. So we spoke a lot. Thomas definitely took us through what I call the guts. We spoke a bit about why EV charging. So let's wrap it up and let's just talk about what we call the plan, install, and manage. So, we said it from the beginning. Start with a site visit. A qualified electrician, electrical contractor goes out, determines what the parking lot looks like, whether that's a garage or a surface lot, what that install is going to look like. Maybe we want to get it as close to the electrical panel as possible. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes owners and operators have an idea of exactly where they want the chargers to go. No problem. We'll work with those teams to do the physical installation. There's a lot of coordinating involved. There's utility rebates and incentives that need to be procured and reserved. There's permitting processes. There's so much that goes behind the scenes. And I joke, it takes a village to just get one EV charger in the ground. It really does. So have a team that knows the ins and the outs of getting a charger in the ground. But once it's in the ground, then it's time to manage it, right? So Switch is going to manage the charger 24/7, 365. Know that there's a ton of support behind you in terms of the customer support, technical, administrative support. We'll help monetize these chargers for you if you're looking to recoup revenue. We'll make them publicly accessible. We'll put them on a private network. Maybe it's a shared network. However you want these configured, just know that they can be configured to your liking. And then again, have a plan, have an ongoing service and maintenance contract in the event that something happens. You know that you've invested in this asset and you just want it to work. We don't want to make it too complicated. We just break it up into these 4 different pillars so that way you can conceptualize the experience as a whole. We had touched upon this earlier, and I definitely didn't want to leave everyone hanging out there, but there are a lot of level 2 incentive programs that are still available throughout the US. You can see California has been the leader for so many years in terms of electrification, but don't sleep on the rest of the states that are very bullish on making electric vehicle charging happen. So, whether that's at the state level, the city level, the utility level, just know that there are options to offset some of these costs. And our team at Switch is well versed in that. They can help take a deep dive. They know their geographies and their territories in and out like the back of their hand, and they will help you get that free money. And when you get the free money, grab with both hands because you just don't know how long it's going to last. So take advantage. If you're on the fence about installing chargers and you happen to fall within an incentive or rebate zone, don't think twice. Do it. And that's it. Hope Thomas answered a lot of your preliminary questions that you might have been thinking about. I saw chat going off as well. I was trying to reply as quick as I could, but I think some more have come in since then. So maybe it's the time to address some of that, Thomas.
Yeah, I can do a bit of rapid fire. Question from Martin: is kilowatt hour billing the norm now in Canada? Generally speaking, yes. The regulations around how Measurement Canada is administering this are a bit in flux, but generally we have a path to get any site kilowatt hour billing enabled today, so that's great. And we see most sites enrolling in those programs. Are your level 2 systems Bluetooth? No, they typically interface with the communication hardware provided by us, meaning Switch provides a little package to get the unit's internet connection, and we maintain that. So if anything goes wrong, it's on us. But typically cellular or Wi-Fi are the primary modes to connect to the internet. Do we provide engineering services to assist customers in determining optimal location? Yes. So you can reach out to someone on our team and we can help help you understand what's the best place to put these things and take into account cost and things like that.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Thomas, Jeremy. There was a question that came through that was just a private question, and it was about getting started. So the path to actually getting chargers in the ground, I know it doesn't take a day, hopefully it doesn't take a year. Kind of like, what are those key milestones that you would recommend that someone make sure they do or don't do when they're, for the first time putting chargers into the ground, into their property?
Do you want me to take this one?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would say consult with a sales specialist, because the Switch sales team knows, again, their geography and their territory so well. Ask them about these available incentives and rebates, I would say out of the gate, because a lot of them, the utility rebates are offering X amount of chargers, for free. So I would say don't be short-sighted in the event you say, oh, my property only might need 2 or may need 4, when you may happen to fall within an incentive territory that is offering up to 10 free ports. I would say absolutely take that all day. I would also engage the residents, as we spoke about too. Again, survey the lot, understand how much are there. And also take a look around too. If they're not charging, if you don't offer EV charging at your property, just scratch your head. Well, where are they charging? Because they're essentially paying for their charge elsewhere. For these fast chargers along major corridors or retail shopping centers. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and if you build it, they will come. So, a couple questions to consider, but again, lean on our team if there is serious interest to do so.
And then it came in from Martin about, can you integrate flow chargers?
Yeah, interesting question. You can start a charging transaction from the Switch app on a Flow charger because we've done the integration. But Flow currently does not allow their hardware to be operated by any other network other than Flow. And so that's just, that's the nature of proprietary hardware. And so we typically promote going with something non-proprietary that uses the OCPP protocol.
Great question. Great question, Martin. Thanks for that. Any other questions before we wrap? Any last burning questions about EV charging? This is the time. Pascal, great. Would you be open to outsourcing the engineering portion of charger placement and installation to partners in Canada? If so, who would be the best point of contact for exploring partnerships?
We typically don't charge for this service. This is kind of part of the sales and consultative process of just working with customers. I know earlier the question was, are there engineering, we don't provide engineering stamp drawings for a lot of these projects unless they're large, in which case the contract electrician would be sourcing that. So that wouldn't be necessarily our scope of work.
But I would say, Pascal, definitely get in touch with our team just so that you're in our ecosystem, and especially if your needs are needed by any of our customers. We love connecting the dots to people who need engineering services, et cetera, for their building. So you can reach out to Thomas or Jeremy, make sure we have your contact. You can use the contact form on our website, and that'll get routed to the right person based if you're Western Canada, Eastern Canada, Central Canada. That'd be super helpful. Otherwise, thanks everybody for having the conversation. Again, you'll get an email afterwards with a link to a video for this. And otherwise, have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.